All right, so now we're going to venture back into the front end and we're going to implement our login, our registration, and all that stuff that has to do with users. So I'm going to run npm run dev because we want to run both our back end and our front end dev server. So that's going to start up. And just want to check the console, make sure that we don't have any issues. Okay. So the first thing that I think I want to do is add our constants for the login, because we want to make a login request. And I think I'm going to add the constant, the reducer, and then the login action first, and then we'll work on the login screen in the UI. So let's go to constants, and we need to create a new file here called user constants. And the first batch of constants that we want are to log in, so let's do export const, and we're going to call this user underscore login underscore request, and set that to user login request. And then I'm just going to copy this down a few times, and this is going to be success. So it's basically the same as making any other type of request. We have request, success, and fail. So this one will be fail and fail. And we might as well, we'll just add our logout as well, because we're going to have a logout. So we'll just say user logout, logout. Good. So we have our constants. Now let's go to reducers, and let's create our user reducers, plural. And the first reducer that we're going to want to deal with is the login reducer. So let's export const. Actually, I'll just copy one of the product reducers here. I'll grab this. So we're going to call this user login reducer. And this user login reducer, the state is just going to be an empty object to begin with. And let's add our user login request. Same here. Okay, and we can auto import these, so I'm just going to do that, and that should bring it in up top. Okay, now for the request, we're just going to have loading true. That's all we need. Well, obviously, we don't want to deal with products here. So loading true. On success, we have loading false, and then the payload, we're going to add that to user info. And then on login fail, we're just going to have loading false, and then whatever is in the payload, that will be the error that we send. And let's just add the logout here as well. So case logout, or user logout, and we'll auto import that. So we're going to return just an empty object when we log out. All right, so let's save that, and let's go into our store.js and bring that in. So first we want to bring the user reducer in. So let's say import from /reducers, and we want user reducers, and what we're bringing in here is the user login reducer. And then down in the state, not down in the state, down in the combine reducers here, let's set user login and set that to user login reducer. So now if we go back here and we look in our state, we have user login, which is just an empty object to begin with. So let's see. Let's add our action now, since we have our reducer. So under actions, let's say user actions.js, and we want a login action that's going to make a request to log in and get the token. So we'll do export const login, And this is going to take in an email and password. And we're going to use Redux Thunk here. So async dispatch. And let's do a try catch. And in the try, we want to dispatch the request. So let's say here, type, and it's going to be user underscore login request. That will auto import it. And we don't have to send a payload with that. And then after the request, we want to dispatch the user login success, but there's, and we want to make our request, but there's something else that we want to do. I'm going to create a config object because when we're actually sending data, we want to send in the headers a content type of application/JSON. So I'm going to say headers. This is also where we'll pass the token for protected routes. We'll set the authorization here for the token. But right now I just want to set content type, and we're going to set that to application/JSON. And then we'll make our request. So let's say const and destructure the data and await post. And we're going to post to /API/users/login. And then we want to pass in as a second argument here an object with the email and password. And then as a third argument, we want to pass in our config. And we have to bring in Axios as well. All right. So we make our request, and then after we make that request, we want to dispatch our user login success. So it's basically the same process as when we did the product list and the product details. So we're going to dispatch the type of user login success. That'll auto import it, and then for the payload, we're going to send the data that we get back from here. And another thing that we're going to want to do is set our user to local storage. So underneath the dispatch here, let's say local storage.set item, and we're going to set this as user info, and we want a JSON.stringify because we're saving the local storage, so it has to be a string. Pass in data. It's going to be the user object, because remember when we log in, just to kind of refresh your memory, if we look at the auth user, so we're hitting this route, which is calling auth user, we're going to get this back. The ID, name, email is admin, and token. So we're going to get those values back in this data, passing that as the payload, and then we're also going to set that to local storage. And then down here, if something fails, I'm just going to copy from any of these other actions. Basically, our our fails are always going to be the same, really. So paste that in. The only thing that's really going to change is the type. Payload is just going to be whatever the message is from the server. So let's change this to user login fail. And we should be good as far as the action goes. Now, just like we did with the cart, because remember we saved the cart items in local storage, we want to load those initially in our initial state in the store.js. So let's head over to store.js, and let's copy this. So that's cart for items from storage. I'm going to change this to user info from storage, and we want to get user info, and JSON.parse user info. Now if nothing's there, I'm going to return null. So we're just checking to see if user info is in storage. If it is, we'll set it to this variable. If not, we'll set it to null, and then we want to add it down here to our initial state. So we actually want to go after cart, and we want to add user login, And we're going to set that inside user login. We're going to set user info to user info from storage. Okay, so that data will it'll always come from local storage if it's in there. So now that we have all that stuff set up, I think what we'll do in the next video is create a new screen, and we'll create a form so that we can actually call the login action, pass our email password in, make the request, send down the state, and go from there.